The Russian Empire under Peter the Great was a place of change and quiet transformation. In the early 18th century, people lived in cities and villages that were slowly adapting to new laws and ideas. Streets in Moscow and St. Petersburg were often busy with merchants and craftsmen, but at the same time, life had a calm rhythm. Farmers worked their lands, tending crops and animals, following the natural cycles of seasons and sun. In the towns, people visited markets where goods from distant lands could be found. Spices, fabrics, and small tools were sold alongside local produce. Children played quietly in the courtyards, and families gathered to prepare simple meals. Women managed households, maintained gardens, and ensured that daily life continued smoothly. The pace of life was slow, measured by sunrise, sunset, and the ringing of church bells. Peter the Great himself encouraged new ways of learning. Schools were established for young men to study navigation, mathematics, and the sciences. Some families sent their children to these schools, hoping they would help the country grow and prosper. Books became more common, and literacy slowly increased in towns. People read quietly by candlelight or by the glow of a stove. The Russian Navy was growing, and shipyards along the rivers were filled with carpenters, blacksmiths, and sailmakers. The sound of hammers and the smell of wood filled the air, yet the work moved with steady, disciplined rhythm. Villagers and city residents alike witnessed the transformation of the country as canals, roads, and small bridges were built to connect towns. Life was demanding, but it had its gentle routines and predictable patterns. Even in the palace, life was a mixture of formality and quiet rituals. Courtiers and advisors moved carefully, observed ceremonies, and followed routines established by the Tsar. In winter, snow covered the streets and rooftops, softening the sounds of daily life. People wore warm clothes, and fires burned in the hearths. Meals were shared quietly, and stories were told by the fireside. Churches played an important role in everyday life. Bells called people to prayer, and the rhythmic chants of services created a calm atmosphere. Villagers, merchants, and townspeople all participated in religious holidays and celebrations, which brought a sense of continuity and order to life. In the countryside, people worked the land from early morning to late afternoon. Fields were plowed, animals were fed, and families cared for each other. The seasons guided their routines, planting in spring, tending in summer, harvesting in autumn, and resting in winter. Snow and frost were part of life, and people adapted to nature's rhythms with patience. Life in Peter the Great's Russia was a mixture of old traditions and new ideas. Slowly, people learned new crafts, built new homes, and explored distant lands through books and maps. The empire was vast, stretching across forests, rivers, and plains, and every village or town had its own quiet rhythm. The people moved through the days with a gentle balance of work, family, and faith, shaping the empire in their daily routines. Although the Tsar was distant from most villages, his reforms affected everyday life. New clothing styles, administrative changes, and modern tools gradually became part of people's routines. The sound of horses, carriages, and hammers blended with birdsong and the murmur of rivers. Life went on quietly, full of small, ordinary moments that together formed the rhythm of a growing empire. Evenings were calm, with families gathering near fires, sharing bread, tea, or soup. Stories of distant lands, of battles long past, or legends of saints were whispered softly. Candles flickered, and the empire seemed vast yet intimate, stretching across snowy forests and wide rivers, while people slept and dreamed quietly in their homes. Life under Peter the Great was not chaotic or loud. It was a slow unfolding of days, seasons, and years. People adapted, observed, and learned. They built bridges, cultivated fields, taught children, and tended homes. The empire grew quietly, step by step, and the people were part of its gentle, patient transformation. The city of St. Petersburg was a new beginning for the Russian Empire. Founded by Peter the Great in 1703, it was built along the banks of the Neva River, where swamps and forests once stretched. Workers arrived from distant villages and towns, bringing with them tools, materials, and hope. Timber was cut from nearby forests, and stones were gathered to lay the foundations of houses, bridges, and canals. The sound of axes, hammers, and the rhythmic pull of sledges filled the air. Yet the work followed a steady, organized pattern. Life in the early city was simple and disciplined. People lived in temporary wooden huts, clustered near construction sites, and shared meals of bread, porridge, and vegetables. Water was drawn from the river, and children played quietly along the banks while their parents worked. Craftsmen, masons, and carpenters carried out their tasks in coordination, building not only homes but a vision of a modern city. Peter the Great envisioned a European-style capital, with wide streets, canals, and public squares. He invited foreign architects and engineers, who taught new building techniques and designs. Some locals were skeptical of the new city, accustomed to older ways of life. But gradually they adapted to the pace of construction and new routines. Evenings were quiet along the Neva. Fires glowed in the wooden houses, and people rested after long hours of labor. Stories were exchanged, songs were softly hummed, and the city slowly took shape beneath the vast northern sky. In winter, snow covered the unfinished streets, muffling the sound of footsteps and tools. Life continued, measured by daylight, the flow of the river, and the passing seasons. In the markets and small gathering places, people exchanged news, goods, and ideas. Simple items like cloth, tools, and dried fish were traded, while letters from distant cities arrived by boat. Women managed households and small gardens, often helping neighbors or tending to animals. Children learned from their parents, observing how to build, cook, and care for the home. The canals and bridges required constant attention. Builders and laborers ensured that water flowed properly, and that timber and stone were placed securely. Every day brought small progress, and small victories kept the spirits of workers high. Even ordinary tasks, like fetching water or lighting fires, became part of the rhythm of city life. Peter the Great also encouraged education and skill development. Young apprentices learned carpentry, navigation, and basic mathematics, preparing for a future where the city could thrive and Russia could become a modern power. Scholars and officials worked quietly in offices, copying documents, keeping records, and assisting with administration. Despite the harsh climate, the city began to take shape. Houses, canals, and streets slowly replaced the swamps. Trees were planted along new avenues, and workshops buzzed with the quiet activity of trade. People adapted to the challenging environment, learning to navigate snowy streets and frozen rivers. Yet life retained its calm rhythm. Religious life continued alongside the construction. Churches were built, and villagers and townspeople attended services, creating a sense of continuity and community. Bells rang at regular times, marking the hours and connecting everyone to a shared daily routine. Faith and work intertwined, giving balance to the lives of those who labored in the new capital. By the time the city's first buildings were completed, St. Petersburg was slowly becoming more than a construction site. It was a living city, with streets, markets, workshops, and families. Life was both challenging and peaceful, a delicate balance of work, rest, and small moments of joy. The vision of Peter the Great unfolded gradually, guided by patience, discipline, and a quiet determination to transform the Russian Empire. Evenings brought reflection and rest. People gathered in small rooms or by the river banks, sharing stories, songs, or simple meals. Candles flickered against wooden walls, and the city felt alive but calm. St. Petersburg, built on swamps and forests, was a testament to human effort and patience, a place where life continued quietly, day by day, under the watchful eyes of its founder. Life in the early capital was a mixture of old traditions and new beginnings. People adapted, learned, and worked together, building not only homes but a new rhythm of life. The city grew slowly, shaped by hands, tools, and the steady flow of the Neva River, offering a peaceful, measured pace that allowed its inhabitants to live, dream, and rest beneath the northern sky. Peter the Great ruled Russia with a vision of modernization. He wanted to bring new skills, technologies, and ideas from Europe to the empire. To achieve this, he introduced reforms that touched many aspects of daily life. Clothing styles changed as men were encouraged to shave their beards and wear European-style clothes. Taxes were reorganized, and new systems of administration were introduced. Although these changes sometimes seemed strict, they gradually shaped a new rhythm in Russian society. Education was a major focus for Peter. Schools for navigation, mathematics, and military training were established. Young men traveled to Europe to study and bring back knowledge to Russia. In towns and villages, literacy slowly spread as more people learned to read and write. People copied books, wrote letters, and shared information quietly, contributing to a more informed society. The army and navy were restructured. Men of different ages and backgrounds trained in new methods of warfare and navigation. Soldiers and sailors followed strict routines, learning discipline and organization. Villagers sometimes watched these exercises from a distance, curious about the new drills and formations, while continuing their own peaceful daily routines at home. New industries were encouraged. Workshops produced tools, clothing, and ships. Artisans learned European techniques, while local craftsmen preserved traditional skills. The combination of old and new created a balanced, quiet rhythm of work. Markets became places not only for trade but also for the exchange of ideas. People discussed farming methods, craft techniques, and small improvements to daily life. Peter also reorganized local administration. Towns had officials responsible for taxes, construction, and public order. Citizens slowly adapted to the new rules, understanding that the empire was changing around them. The pace of reform was gradual, allowing ordinary people to adjust while maintaining their routines. Religious practices continued alongside reforms. Church services, festivals, and holidays remained central to daily life. Bells marked the hours, and villagers attended quietly, participating in ceremonies and community gatherings. Faith provided comfort and stability during a time of change. The reform of canals, roads, and bridges also affected ordinary life. People traveled more easily, goods moved faster, and towns became better connected. Farmers could sell produce in distant markets, and families communicated more often with relatives in other regions. These small changes slowly reshaped the daily rhythm of life. Hygiene and health practices were introduced. Peter encouraged baths, clean streets, and better housing. Although these practices were new to many villagers, they gradually became part of everyday routines. People learned to adapt to new ideas without losing their sense of order and comfort. Evenings in the empire remained peaceful. Families gathered by stoves and fires, sharing meals and stories. Children listened quietly as elders spoke of distant lands, heroic deeds, or moral lessons. Candlelight flickered on wooden walls, and the empire felt vast but calm. Life continued in its gentle rhythm, with work, rest, and quiet reflection intertwined. Peter the Great's reforms brought challenges but also small comforts. People learned new skills, built new infrastructure, and adjusted to changing laws. Daily life remained measured and calm. As the empire slowly transformed, the balance between old traditions and new innovations created a steady, patient rhythm that guided the Russian people through years of change. The Russian Empire under Peter grew quietly but steadily. Villages, towns, and cities adapted to new demands while keeping familiar routines. Every day was a combination of work, learning, faith, and family life. Through patience, observation, and gradual adaptation, the people became part of a larger vision, contributing to the growth of a modernizing empire while maintaining the quiet rhythm of daily life. Peter the Great traveled to Europe in 1697 to learn about shipbuilding, trade, and new technologies. He spent months in the Netherlands, England, and other countries, observing workshops, shipyards, and cities. He studied quietly, listening to skilled workers, learning how to build strong ships, and how to organize a modern navy. These journeys were long and often tiring, but they shaped Peter's vision for Russia. Upon returning, Peter applied what he had learned to his empire. Shipyards were improved, towns were modernized, and trade routes were expanded. Craftsmen and apprentices were trained in new techniques, often following methods observed abroad. Markets slowly reflected European goods, styles, and ideas, while people continued their daily routines in a calm and steady rhythm. Peter also encouraged new clothing customs and social practices. Men shaved their beards, wore European-style clothes, and adapted to new table manners. Even small changes, like using forks or cutting bread differently, became part of daily life. Families, workers, and students adjusted gradually, finding comfort in combining old habits with new customs. Education and learning spread quietly. Schools were opened in towns, teaching navigation, mathematics, and sciences. Some young Russians traveled to Europe to study further, returning with knowledge to share. Teachers, scholars, and craftsmen contributed to a slow, steady flow of ideas. In homes, people read quietly, copied letters, and discussed small improvements in work and life. Workshops and shipyards were full of activity, yet the atmosphere was calm and orderly. Timber was cut, ropes prepared, and sails stitched, while masters guided apprentices carefully. Every day brought small progress, and the combination of skill, patience, and discipline kept the city and empire moving forward. Evenings in towns and villages were quiet. Families gathered near fires, children listened to stories, and candles flickered gently. The sound of distant bells, rivers, and wind through trees created a serene backdrop. Life followed its natural pace, guided by sunlight, seasons, and human routines. Peter's reforms were not only practical but symbolic. Western architecture, new tools, and cultural practices slowly changed the visual and social landscape of Russian towns. Streets, bridges, and canals were reshaped with careful attention to design and function. People observed, learned, and adapted, maintaining calm rhythms while embracing gradual change. Religious life continued alongside Westernization. Church services, festivals, and prayers remained important. Bells rang at dawn, noon, and evening, and villagers and townspeople participated quietly. Faith provided balance, helping people adjust to new ways of dressing, working, and learning, while maintaining continuity in their daily lives. Trade and travel increased. Merchants moved goods along rivers and roads, and ideas flowed quietly with travelers returning from Europe. People exchanged knowledge about crops, crafts, and technologies, slowly integrating new methods into familiar routines. Markets became a place for both commerce and learning, with calm discussions and gentle curiosity. By the end of Peter's European travels and reforms, Russian society was slowly transforming. Daily life remained measured, yet changes in clothing, architecture, education, and trade reflected a new era. Villages, towns, and cities adapted patiently. Combining old traditions with new practices, life in the empire retained its peaceful rhythm. Even as the pace of change increased under the watchful eye of the Tsar. Even in winter, when snow-blanketed streets and rivers froze, life continued quietly. People tended homes, gardens, and livestock, while learning new skills and customs. Fires burned in stoves. Meals were shared, and children listened to gentle stories. The empire felt vast but intimate, a place where gradual learning and patient adaptation shaped both the people and the land. Peter the Great's European journeys and reforms created a Russia that slowly looked and felt different, yet daily life remained calm, predictable, and steady. Work, learning, family, and faith intertwined in a gentle rhythm, allowing the Russian people to adjust to new ideas while keeping the familiar patterns of their everyday lives. St. Petersburg grew slowly but steadily after its founding. The city was built on marshes and forests, and every day brought new challenges and small achievements. Wooden houses and small bridges appeared along the canals, while streets were carefully planned and widened. Craftsmen, masons, and carpenters worked steadily, creating a rhythm of labor that became the foundation of city life. People adapted to the new environment. Farmers and workers moved from surrounding villages, bringing families and belongings. Markets formed near the main squares, selling bread, vegetables, fabrics, and tools. Children ran quietly through the streets and along the canals, while adults managed homes, workshops, and small gardens. Life followed a gentle, predictable pattern, guided by the flow of the river and the change of seasons. Workshops and trade were central to daily life. Carpentry, blacksmithing, and weaving became essential for building homes and providing goods for the community. Apprentices learned from masters, slowly acquiring the skills needed to maintain the city. Every finished house, every repaired bridge, and every new boat contributed to the steady progress of St. Petersburg. Peter the Great encouraged European techniques and ideas. Streets were widened, canals were reinforced, and public squares were designed with attention to order and function. Architects, engineers, and craftsmen worked together, teaching locals new methods while respecting older traditions. The combination of old and new created a calm rhythm where innovation and tradition coexisted quietly. Daily life included simple pleasures and routines. Families gathered for meals, exchanged stories, and shared the responsibilities of cooking, cleaning, and tending gardens. Neighbors helped each other during busy times, like harvest or construction, creating a sense of community. Even small celebrations, such as seasonal festivals or religious holidays, brought life and warmth to the city without disturbing its calm atmosphere. Canals and rivers shaped daily activity. Boats carried goods and people, while children played along the banks. Fishermen quietly cast their nets, and merchants arranged their stalls near the water. Life moved with the rhythm of flowing water, echoing softly through the streets and workshops. Education and learning were spreading. Schools taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and navigation. Young apprentices and students followed a daily routine of study, work, and practice. Knowledge was shared quietly, whether through books, letters, or instruction from experienced craftsmen. The city became a place where learning and labor existed side by side. Religious life remained important. Churches were built along main streets, and villagers, merchants, and city dwellers attended services. Bells rang at regular hours, marking time and creating a sense of order. faith, and daily work intertwined, providing both spiritual and practical structure to life in St. Petersburg. Evenings brought calm. Fires glowed in wooden homes, and people rested after long hours of work. Families gathered, telling stories or quietly discussing the day. Snow in winter softened footsteps and muffled distant sounds, creating a peaceful, intimate atmosphere. Life moved slowly, measured by seasons, sunlight, and the gentle routines of city and river. Markets, workshops, and homes all contributed to the steady heartbeat of the city. People worked together, learned new skills, and maintained traditions. The growth of St. Petersburg reflected both human effort and patience, a city rising quietly from marshes and forests. Daily life retained a gentle rhythm, with work, rest, and family intertwined in harmony. By the end of these early years, St. Petersburg was no longer just a construction site. It had become a living city, full of quiet streets, busy markets, and small neighborhoods. People moved through their days with careful attention to work, faith, and family, experiencing both change and continuity. Life in the early capital was a gentle blend of old traditions and new beginnings, shaped patiently by human hands. Even as the city expanded, its people maintained a calm pace. Children learned from parents, apprentices from masters, and neighbors from each other. Rivers, canals, and streets carried the rhythm of daily life, while the northern sun marked the passage of time. St. Petersburg, built on challenges and human effort, became a testament to careful planning, patience, and the quiet unfolding of a new urban life. Peter the Great believed that a strong army was essential for the security and growth of Russia. He reformed the military, introducing new training methods, weapons, and uniforms. Soldiers followed strict routines, practicing drills and maneuvers every day. Villagers watched quietly from a distance, curious about the precise movements and new formations. While continuing their own daily tasks at home, the army required discipline, organization, and skill. Young men learned not only to fight but also to navigate, build fortifications, and maintain equipment. Each day brought practice in marching, handling muskets, and operating cannons, despite the long hours and hard work. A calm rhythm developed, creating a steady pattern that shaped the life of soldiers and their families. The presence of the modernized army affected towns and villages. Training grounds were established near cities, and supply lines brought food, tools, and clothing to soldiers. Markets adapted to the needs of the military, providing provisions quietly and efficiently. Local craftsmen produced weapons, armor, and uniforms, blending traditional skills with new techniques learned from Europe. Reforms also reached the Navy. Peter built shipyards and trained sailors in navigation, seamanship, and gunnery. Ships were constructed steadily, and each vessel became a symbol of the empire's growing strength. Life in shipyards followed a calm yet structured routine, with workers and apprentices coordinating their tasks to build, repair, and maintain the fleet. Ordinary people experienced small but important changes. Men could be called to serve, while women managed households, gardens, and local businesses. Children observed their parents, learning responsibility, practical skills, and the value of cooperation. Life at home and work continued with quiet adaptation, as families supported each other through the challenges of military reform. Education and skill development became central to the new army. Soldiers studied maps, learned geometry for fortification construction, and practiced teamwork. Apprentices and young recruits gained knowledge that would help them in civilian life as well. Communities slowly absorbed these lessons, creating a subtle but lasting effect on daily life. Evenings remained calm across the empire. Families gathered near fires, meals were shared, and children listened quietly to stories or instructions from elders. The sound of distant drums, soldiers' footsteps, and the rhythm of drills became part of the background of everyday life. Life maintained its gentle pace, with work, rest, and learning intertwined. Religion continued to provide stability. Soldiers attended services when possible, and villagers maintained rituals at home and in churches. Bells rang at regular intervals, creating order and connecting people across towns and cities. Faith and daily responsibilities existed together, giving structure and comfort to everyday life. Markets, workshops, and homes quietly adjusted to the army's needs. Trade routes supported military logistics, and craftspeople contributed to weapon and uniform production. The combination of work, education, and military preparation created a slow but steady rhythm in society, allowing ordinary people to maintain their routines while participating in the empire's growth. Even during harsh winters, life continued steadily. Soldiers trained in the cold, families maintained homes, and workshops operated quietly. The snow softened footsteps and sounds, creating a calm and peaceful atmosphere. People adapted gradually, finding balance between daily responsibilities and the larger demands of reform. Peter the Great's military modernization shaped both the army and society. Daily life remained measured and calm. Even as soldiers learned new skills, communities supported military needs, and workshops produced tools and weapons. The empire grew quietly, with ordinary people contributing patiently to the strength and stability of Russia. By integrating new military methods, education, and organization, Peter created a society that could support a modern army while maintaining familiar routines. Life was a balance of work, learning, faith, and family, allowing the Russian people to experience change in a calm and steady way. The rhythm of daily life continued, intertwined with the empire's gradual transformation. Peter the Great understood that to modernize Russia, he would need resources, and the state's primary source of wealth came from taxes. In the early 18th century, he introduced sweeping reforms to reorganize how taxes were collected, how they were calculated, and who was responsible for payment. Peasants, landowners, and urban residents all had to adjust to these new expectations, which gradually reshaped daily life across the empire. The reforms divided responsibilities between households and village communities. Every family had to report its livestock, crops, and sometimes personal belongings. Officials traveled quietly from village to village, recording information in books and ledgers. For the peasants, life became a rhythm of work and observation, planning planting and harvest with the awareness that taxes would be assessed and collected. Early mornings often began with chores, tending animals, fetching water, and preparing the household for the day. Children learned to notice patterns in daily work, sometimes helping parents calculate grain or livestock to meet expected obligations. Adults planned their labor carefully, balancing the physical demands of farming with the need to provide for taxes. Taxes were often paid not in coins, which were scarce, but in kind grain, wool, hay, or other goods. Families had to organize what could be given, what had to be stored for winter, and what would sustain them through seasonal work. This required a quiet patience and careful attention to both immediate needs and long-term planning. Village officials and local administrators traveled between homes, making their presence known but never overwhelming. Their task was methodical, recording, verifying, and occasionally instructing. The villagers learned to adapt, maintaining steady routines that allowed work, family life, and obligations to coexist. The rhythm of life became a gentle cycle of labor, observation, and planning. In towns and cities, craftsmen and merchants adjusted to the expectations of the state. Bakers, Carpenters and weavers prepared goods that might be needed for tax payments or local trade. Markets operated in a calm, measured way, allowing people to move efficiently while observing the social norms and rules imposed by the state. Children observed quietly, learning through participation and example. Evening offered a pause in the day's labor. Families gathered near stoves or fires, shared simple meals, and discussed what had been done or what needed to be done. The distant sound of bells or flowing rivers reminded them of the passage of time. Night was for rest and reflection, and households valued the quiet balance between work, preparation, and family connection. Religious rituals provided stability. Churches offered guidance and a predictable rhythm, reminding villagers of cycles, holidays, and moral duties. Daily prayers or Sunday attendance reinforced continuity in a world of change, where taxes, new laws, and reforms altered the pace and requirements of life. Faith offered reassurance and calm. Seasons dictated additional structure. Spring required planting. Summer brought tending and harvesting. Autumn demanded careful storage, and winter called for preparation and reflection. Families incorporated the tax system into this natural rhythm, ensuring that obligations were met while sustaining themselves through each seasonal cycle. Young people gradually learned responsibility. Boys and girls watched parents measure grain, distribute goods, and note records. They participated in simple ways, understanding early that their family's survival and social position depended on careful attention, cooperation, and steady work. Skills in calculation, planning, and observation became vital, quietly shaping character over time. Despite challenges, communities persisted with steady cooperation. Neighbors helped each other move grain, repair homes, or manage animals. Small acts of assistance reinforced trust, strengthened relationships, and created a rhythm that allowed daily work and obligations to feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Even as reforms imposed new rules, the natural patterns of daily life continued. Meals, chores, tending animals, and social interactions persisted in gentle cycles. Taxes became another element of life, integrated into routines rather than a disruptive force. Families adjusted patiently, balancing duty with comfort and continuity. By the end of a year, households had adapted to Peter's system. They knew when officials might arrive, how to plan food and supplies, and how to sustain life while meeting obligations. Life continued with a calm, predictable rhythm, where labor, family, faith, and social cooperation intertwined naturally. The empire grew quietly, and ordinary life persisted alongside gradual reform. St. Petersburg slowly became a center of culture and learning, a city shaped by ambition, architecture, and careful planning. The canals reflected the sky quietly, and the cobblestone streets absorbed the sound of footsteps, creating a gentle rhythm that marked the passage of each day. Artists, scholars, and musicians found their way to the city, bringing new ideas and techniques. Their presence was noticeable but never disruptive, blending with the calm pace of ordinary life. Theaters and concert halls began to appear, though modest at first. People attended performances with anticipation, sitting quietly and listening to music or observing actors on stage. Stories of plays and events spread slowly from neighbor to neighbor, creating conversations that were gentle and hurried and reflective. Even those who did not attend felt part of the city's cultural pulse through these quiet exchanges. Public festivals and religious ceremonies provided rhythm and structure. Seasonal celebrations marked planting, harvest, or religious holidays. In the squares and gardens, musicians played quietly. Dancers moved in measured steps, and villagers or townspeople participated with calm curiosity. The gentle presence of community Events reinforced connections without imposing pressure or urgency. Daily education offered stability and subtle growth. Schools taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and sometimes practical crafts. Children moved through lessons with patience, guided by teachers who encouraged observation, practice, and reflection. Learning was slow and deliberate, merging with the rhythms of family life and household responsibilities. Knowledge became part of a continuous, quiet flow rather than an urgent or stressful pursuit. Artisans and craftsmen contributed quietly to the city's atmosphere. Painters decorated walls and ceilings with subtle imagery. Sculptors carved stone that blended into buildings, and carpenters created furniture that enhanced homes. Each creation was a small gift to daily life, a piece of beauty that required attention and care but did not overwhelm. The rhythm of making and observing art intertwined gently with routine work and leisure. Markets operated with measured care. Merchants displayed goods, textiles, food, tools, and customers moved slowly, selecting items carefully. Conversations were calm and courteous, passing on news, ideas, and practical information. Children observed these interactions, learning the habits, skills, and norms that shaped social life in the city. Trade became a rhythm of quiet negotiation, exchange, and observation. Religious life provided moments of reflection. Churches marked the hours with bells, signaling prayer and gathering. Rituals offered comfort and predictability, linking spiritual life to the daily routines of citizens. Attendance was deliberate, mindful, and integrated into broader social life. Faith, like education and art, became a gentle companion, reinforcing a sense of stability and continuity. Evenings brought a peaceful closure to the day. Candles glowed in homes and public spaces, reflecting off icy canals or wooden walls. Families gathered for meals, storytelling, or music, sharing time that was rich in attention and care but quiet in pace. Snow, wind, and distant bells added to the serene ambience. People moved through evenings deliberately, balancing rest with reflection, warmth, and companionship. Small salons and clubs began to form. Adults discussed literature, science, and governance in measured tones, quietly exchanging ideas. Children listened, sometimes participating gently, absorbing knowledge without pressure. These gatherings contributed to a slow cultural growth, extending awareness and curiosity while maintaining calm social norms. Seasonal changes shaped activity. Spring brought gardens and planting, summer concerts or outdoor events, autumn harvests, and winter indoor gatherings or reading. Cultural activities and social interactions adapted to the natural rhythm of life. People experienced learning, entertainment, and reflection without haste, allowing the seasons to guide the pace of daily existence. The presence of art, education, and public events did not disrupt routine. Families balanced chores, meals, work, and social participation in a steady rhythm. Children learned observation and patience. Adults balanced production and leisure. And the entire community moved through daily life in harmony with seasonal changes and cultural rhythms. Even small tasks reflected this gentle approach. Preparing for festivals, creating crafts, or tending gardens required careful attention but offered quiet satisfaction. Work and leisure were intertwined, and every action became part of the broader and hurried flow of life. Culture was experienced slowly, leaving time for thought, observation, and quiet appreciation. By the end of this period, St. Petersburg had begun to establish a unique identity. The city's rhythm was a blend of work, education, culture, and family life. People moved deliberately, absorbed ideas, participated in events, and quietly observed the unfolding of their city's growth. Daily life maintained calm continuity, and cultural life enhanced the gentle pulse of the city without rushing or overwhelming. Art, music, literature, and communal events gradually became a framework for living. Knowledge, observation, and reflection intertwined with chores and obligations. Each day followed a careful pattern, balancing productivity, social engagement, and the gentle enrichment offered by education and culture. Life in St. Petersburg moved steadily, deliberately, and quietly, creating a city in which ordinary existence and cultural growth could coexist. Even during cold winters or challenging seasons, families and communities maintained this rhythm. Children observed stories by firelight, music played in small gatherings, and learning continued indoors. The city adapted to both climate and season while preserving the gentle pulse of daily life, where work, culture, and reflection blended naturally. Through steady engagement with arts, learning, and social activity, the people of St. Petersburg experienced cultural growth alongside ordinary life. Life's rhythm remained calm, reflective, and balanced, ensuring that the city developed slowly, steadily, and harmoniously. Winter in St. Petersburg brought quiet transformation to the city. Snow-blanketed streets and rooftops, muffling sound and softening the pace of daily life. Canals froze slowly, reflecting pale light from the low winter sun, while smoke rose gently from chimneys. Mixing with crisp air, citizens adapted naturally, moving through the city with calm awareness of cold, distance, and routine. Early mornings began slowly. Families lit fires, prepared warm meals, and dressed carefully to face the frost. Children helped where they could, bringing wood, tending small tasks, or observing elders manage household needs. Each movement was deliberate, measured, and part of a rhythm shaped by both necessity and habit. Market life adjusted to the season. Merchants carried goods carefully along snowy streets, protecting produce, textiles, and tools. Buyers moved with patience, selecting items thoughtfully, balancing personal needs with the limitations winter imposed. Social interaction slowed, yet small gestures of help, conversation, and observation created a sense of community warmth despite cold winds. Water was drawn from wells or collected in organized ways, sometimes requiring careful planning to avoid frozen pumps or frozen rivers. Fuel was gathered and distributed with care, ensuring that families remained warm and households could continue routine activities. Every chore required attention and awareness, yet repeated daily. These actions became familiar and steady. Winter also brought challenges in travel and work. Roads became slippery, horses and carts moved cautiously, and artisans or laborers adapted tasks to indoor spaces. Work schedules slowed, but activity continued steadily, reflecting resilience, adaptability, and quiet determination. Life carried on, balanced between physical necessity and the gentle pace demanded by nature. Education continued inside homes and schools. Children studied by candlelight or near stoves, practicing reading, writing, and basic calculation. Teachers adjusted lessons to shorter daylight hours, creating a calm learning rhythm. Learning during winter was deliberate, slow, and reflective, allowing young minds to grow without pressure. Social gatherings adapted to indoor spaces. Families, neighbors, and friends met quietly for discussion, music, or storytelling. Small concerts, readings, or informal performances occurred near fires or in modest halls. These gatherings offered warmth, entertainment, and reflection, maintaining social and cultural continuity even in the coldest months. Daily meals provided structure and comfort. Stews, breads, preserved vegetables, and warm drinks nourished bodies and reinforced the rhythm of shared life. Families coordinated preparation and consumption, sometimes exchanging small portions with neighbors. Food became more than sustenance. It was part of a gentle ritual, a connection between household members and the broader community. Religious observance remained steady. Churches held services, provided counsel, and marked important winter festivals. Bells rang at consistent times, offering guidance, reflection, and a sense of time passing calmly. Ritual and faith connected individuals to a larger rhythm, reminding them of continuity, hope, and shared experience. Evening brought quiet reflection. Fires glowed softly, shadows moved gently along walls, and conversations or storytelling continued at a slow pace. People rested, recovered, and prepared for the next day's work, incorporating learning, creativity, and observation into daily routines. Life moved deliberately, calmly, and predictably. Outdoor activity became measured. Sleds and carts moved slowly, children played quietly near homes, and work tasks were adjusted to shorter daylight and cold temperatures. Winter required patience, observation, and careful planning, yet offered its own rhythm, blending with other aspects of life naturally. Artisans continued indoor work. Painters, woodworkers, and textile workers produced goods steadily, often observing and learning from one another. Craft, creativity, and skill were shared carefully, quietly enriching homes, public spaces, and cultural life. The rhythm of making and observing remained calm, deliberate, and integrated with daily necessity. By the end of winter, households had adapted fully to the season's demands. Life moved with steady precision, balancing chores, social interaction, education, and faith. Challenges were met with patience, resourcefulness, and shared effort. The city, though cold, retained warmth through human activity, observation, and quiet cooperation. Snow-covered streets and frozen canals became familiar patterns. Citizens understood the timing of each task, the weight of each chore, and the quiet satisfaction of maintaining continuity despite hardship. Daily rhythms were preserved, allowing winter to coexist with culture, learning, and social engagement. In this quiet season, people of St. Petersburg developed resilience and measured awareness. Children learned through participation, adults balanced necessity and comfort, and families maintained connections with neighbors. The city adapted gracefully, allowing life to continue steadily, safely, and calmly. Winter was not merely a season of hardship, but a period of rhythm, reflection, and preparation. Work, family, education, social life, and faith intertwined, creating a deliberate pace that shaped character and community. In these months, the gentle continuity of St. Petersburg life was both visible and deeply felt. Peter the Great's reign left a lasting mark on Russia and its people. The city of St. Petersburg, built with determination and vision, stood as a symbol of transformation and ambition. Streets, canals, and buildings reflected a careful plan, blending natural beauty with human design. Life in the city carried the quiet imprint of these changes, where ordinary routines met with broader aspiration. Daily life continued its rhythm, shaped by the seasons, cultural events, education, and work. Families moved through their chores, meals, and social interaction in a steady, deliberate flow. Children learned observation, patience, and skill, while adults balanced responsibilities with care and attention. Even ordinary days carried traces of Peter's reforms, influencing tax obligations, social organization, and urban life. Work and craft remained central. Artisans, builders, and merchants continued their tasks with calm diligence. Buildings rose slowly, canals were maintained, and markets operated thoughtfully. Each act of labor contributed to a broader vision of St. Petersburg, quietly embedding the legacy of planning, discipline, and civic responsibility into everyday life. Education and learning became part of the city's enduring rhythm. Schools, small salons, and family instruction ensured that knowledge and skill passed from one generation to the next. Children observed elders, practiced crafts, and absorbed the measured pace of city life. Over time, learning became a natural part of the household and community routine, fostering calm growth, reflection, and awareness. Social life in St. Petersburg adapted to new norms while preserving old habits. Festivals, religious rituals, and cultural events occurred with quiet continuity. Citizens observed and participated in gentle rhythms of ceremony, gathering, and celebration. Neighbors helped one another, and families balanced personal needs with broader civic expectations. Life flowed deliberately, with subtle attention to social harmony. Winter brought measured challenges, but also opportunities for reflection and growth. Families adapted to snow, cold, and short days with careful planning, patience, and cooperation. Work, education, and social interaction continued indoors or in adjusted outdoor routines. The city, though frozen, maintained warmth through human activity, observation, and calm cooperation. Peter's legacy was visible in the streets, canals, and civic structures of St. Petersburg. Each building, bridge, and pathway reflected a careful plan and the determination of those who built it. Citizens, craftsmen, and families moved through these spaces with awareness, integrating their daily routines with the enduring framework of the city. The past and present existed in quiet harmony. Evening routines offered moments of rest and reflection. Families gathered, meals were shared, stories told, and music played. Candles glowed softly, reflecting on wooden walls and icy canals. The rhythm of life continued steadily, balancing labor, learning, culture, and social interaction. Observation, patience, and calm perseverance guided each household through daily routines. Faith and tradition provided stability. Churches marked time and offered guidance. Religious festivals reinforced continuity, reminding citizens of shared history and collective identity. Rituals offered calm reflection, balancing the demands of daily life with spiritual awareness. Citizens found reassurance in these rhythms, integrating them into everyday practice. Cultural life blossomed quietly. Artisans, musicians, and writers contributed to a rich urban atmosphere. Knowledge and skill were shared carefully, with attention to detail and patient instruction. Young people learned through observation and practice, integrating education, craft, and reflection into daily living. Creativity and routine existed in a delicate and hurried balance. As St. Petersburg grew, people learned to live with awareness of both the city's potential and its demands. They observed each season, adjusted routines, and maintained harmony with both nature and civic structure. Families, neighborhoods, and communities nurtured a rhythm that allowed work, education, social life, and culture to coexist peacefully. By the end of Peter's reign, the city had established a pattern of life where ordinary existence, civic responsibility, and cultural growth intertwined. The streets and canals reflected planning, care, and human skill. Daily life was enriched by observation, routine, and gentle cooperation. The city became a living testament to Peter's vision, a place where change, growth, and continuity coexisted in calm, steady rhythm. Peter the Great's reforms, vision, and determination left a quiet but enduring mark. Life in St. Petersburg carried traces of his legacy in every season, every household, and every community interaction. The city continued to grow and adapt, but its heartbeat remained steady, reflective, and harmonious. Work, learning, culture, and family life flowed together in a measured, peaceful rhythm that echoed Peter's influence long after his reign ended. In every building, canal, and street, the people of St. Petersburg lived, learned, and reflected. They moved through daily life with awareness, patience, and calm. Integrating history and future into their routines, Peter's city became more than a symbol. It became a lived experience of order, care, and enduring legacy. Peter the Great's reforms and vision shaped St. Petersburg, leaving a lasting impact on the city and its society.